When did you realize you married the wrong person? We were in the bathroom getting showered and dressed for a friend's wedding. I was in the best shape of my life at the time. Feeling good about myself. And I thought I looked good in that suit. She was finishing her makeup and I remarked at how beautiful she looked. I waited for her to say something nice in reply, but she didn't. And it just hit me. I couldn't remember a single time that she complimented me on my appearance. So I said that to her. I said, "You know, I always tell you how beautiful you are. And how attracted to you I am. But I never recall you ever saying that I look good or that I look handsome." She stopped applying her mascara long enough to dismissively roll her eyes at me. So I made the mistake of asking her, "Do you even find me attractive?" And she flatly said, "No." I asked, "Why did you marry me then?" And she said, "I didn't think it was important at the time. I never felt so ugly and unloved. And it hurt even more when I had been feeling so good about myself for once in my life 30 seconds earlier." Edit. Since so many people are asking, here is a pic of me wearing the suit with my kids. But from about 10 years after this incident. When I realized if we weren't dating I wouldn't have wanted to be his friend. I realized that I was hiding good news from her because I knew she would make me feel bad about it. I hoped she was going to grow up and stop being selfish and childish. She never did. This post made me think of a quote by Robin Williams. "I used to think the worst thing in life was to end up all alone. It's not. The worst thing in life is to end up with people that make you feel all alone." Not married but together for years. Got diagnosed with cancer and she kinda shut off. She then decided to leave several months later. At an appointment I was officially 1 year clear. Which is a milestone. I realized I was alone through a lot of it. She never wanted anything to do with it. Was a revelation to myself that the relationship breakdown wasn't all because of me. Got my 3 years tests this weekend. Blood tests and scans etc. Current GF is driving me and then taking me out to lunch afterwards. Hell of an upgrade. When I came home from the after being diagnosed with a severe lung disorder. And she immediately left me with the kids so she could go out drinking with friends. Her exact words were, "I need you to make them dinner. I'm running late to meet up with everyone." 6 months after our wedding when I found out about the emotional, he says only emotional but I'm pretty sure it was physical too, affair through text messages. He had sent his affair partner screenshots of my texts to him in which I was begging him to talk to me and tell me what was wrong. They both proceeded to make fun of my desperation to fix my marriage and his affair partner said something along the lines of, "Poor Valiant. She doesn't know anything and keeps begging you for attention and affection." The moment I read those words I realized how big of a mistake I had made. One day I realized I had become a smaller version of myself. When he was messaging a side chick on our wedding day and boy did it go sideways from there. This will be a different answer. My wife is definitely my soulmate and best friend. I'll never find anyone that I can share my true thoughts, soul with. She's everything I want in a mental partner. We complete each other in that regard. Sexuality-wise, it's not the best match. Did I marry my best friend? Definitely. Was that a mistake? I don't know. When I lost twins and he dropped me off at the hospital to get an operation to have my babies removed. He dropped me off at the hospital bleeding and went for a party with his friends. Edit. Fixed typo. After the kid was born. Total shift. Turns out only I wanted to be a parent. Engaged, not quite married yet. When I had been on mandatory bedrest and caring for our infant son. After having emergency surgery for nearly bleeding to death after a miscarriage. And he came home from work and looked me dead in the face and said, "Why aren't the fucking dishes done?" Called my mom the next morning and told her I was leaving. Hightailed it out of there 2 weeks later. I realized like 5 years into our 19-year marriage. But the nail that made me leave was when my ex said that our children hadn't earned his love. And that shook my whole foundation. Literally speechless for 2 days and then I started thinking. Wondering if I had earned his love yet. And I couldn't stop those kind of thoughts. You don't earn love. It is freely given, especially to children. Edited for confusion. I realized early on he wasn't right for me. But we had 3 kids. And our youngest has special needs. So I stayed. He didn't make this statement until 2 years ago when I asked why I never heard him say "I love you" to the kids while they were growing up. And that's when he told me about the earning. I asked for the separation and divorce shortly after that. When I got her to admit she was having an affair. 10 years married. 2 kids. What a mess. She followed it up a month or 2 later telling me she never loved a person like she does with new partner. So welcome to divorce land. Population. Me. This thread has made me more secure in the fact that I absolutely chose the right person. I almost did. And TBH. There were a lot of red flag prior to this. But this was the catalyst. We'd been dating 4 years. Slated to be married in 8 months. I noticed he was making lots of likes and comments on Britney's MySpace. Nothing huge or obvious. Then not long after, he locked his phone. But I managed to see he was also getting MSGs regularly from someone also named Britney. I had suspected, but no proof now. I worked swing and nights at the time. Came home early one night to him in our bed. With you know who. Britney. First thing this fucker says when I walk in on them is, "Get this. There was no exchange of fluids. I promise babe." Later Britney got a hold of me on MySpace. We met up. She had no idea I was even in the picture. We're still friends. I kicked him and his fluids out of my house. The end. ETA. Britney let me read all over their correspondence via MySpace and text. She was very upfront about not realizing he was with someone. I will admit Britney was not exceptionally bright, but he had this thing all worked out. He stuffed all my stuff in a closet. Even removed photos of us from the walls. I don't wear makeup. And at the time didn't own much stuff. We were poor. I was the only one working. He kept getting fired for sexual harassment. Red flag. I know. He also kept the house dark while they watched a movie. Then moved to the bed. Said it made it romantic. When she fucked a high school flame for a year whilst hiding it and staying home on my single income. We weren't working. I knew that. I was trying to improve things. And we'd talked about it. But she somehow neglected to give me that detail. I'm not angry that she didn't love me. But fuck. Just tell me. Don't do me dirty like that after 13 years. It was a death of 1,000 cuts. One of the first was when I realized she didn't trust me. We had been together around 10 years at this point. But I had a moment of clarity and literally said to her, "You don't trust me, do you?" Before she could answer I said, "You don't trust anybody." And she agreed. She would routinely throw the kids out of the tub and the bathroom completely naked because they splashed her while getting a bath. And not just that. She would yell at the top of her lungs at how bad they were. The kids were around 2 to 4 at the time. God forbid the toddler splashes the water in the tub. Another time I don't even remember the cause, but I tried to play mediator. As in, "Okay daughter, you did something wrong. Let's apologize to mommy." And she would. Then I'd ask mommy to apologize to our daughter for her role, and mom absolutely refused to apologize. I've known this lady more than 20 years and I've never heard her apologize. Literally never. The final straw was when one of our kids wanted a hug good night before bedtime. She locked herself in our bedroom and refused the hug because she had hugged them earlier in the day. Kids were crying. They didn't understand. I was devastated watching this unfold. Why doesn't mom want to hug me? I try my best to not let it impact me. But we share custody now and I have to watch how she interacts without kids. It's hard. The best consolidation is the kids are getting older and they're starting to figure it out. On the wedding day, she spent a fortune on unnecessary things. And I knew I'd be the one fitting the bill on the credit card she ran up. So I told her no more. She said she wanted an ice cream vendor there. We already had 2 dessert bars. Told her it was not needed. She fought me on it but finally agreed. Wedding day comes. I'm standing with my groomsmen. In comes the ice cream truck. Knew right then. Sadly. I came home from a long day of work to find burn marks all over the carpet and linoleum. My then husband had spent the entire day playing games on his PC. While doing so, he had been ignoring our puppy who had managed to somehow get a hold of a phone battery, bite through it, and cause a small fire. Thankfully, the dog wasn't injured. This event, on top of finding out shortly before he had been lying about going to community college for almost a year, was the turning point where my feelings died. I had no idea how he felt about me. Almost 9 years together. He didn't propose. I did. He didn't tell his family when we married. They found out online. He never shared his energy or emotions with me. I ultimately had a realization that I didn't even know what he thought of me. Other than that, I was pretty. I didn't know if he thought I was cool or funny or interesting or smart. I would share myself with him. My thoughts, interests, humor. I'd get nothing in return. I realized it had always been this way. I felt unseen, unheard. I felt like I was boring and uninteresting. I didn't feel special. I just wanted to feel some sort of connection. I wanted our souls to meet. He seemed incapable. Edit. I have a few people asking why I stayed or why I proposed or why I married. We met really young. We went through a lot of firsts together. He was respectful. He was on track to a good path. I had a challenging home life. Although he was emotionally absent. He was secure and I never had felt security before. Was engaged. Not married. 3-year international relationship. Completely ready for the battle with the US immigration system. Which I still feel can go directly fuck itself. When she had to leave after a normal month-long visit. Which was totally normal and what we'd been doing for years. We PDA'd all to hell at the airport and she said herself that she couldn't wait to come back. Then went completely silent. Zero contact. The second she got home, Europe. Took 3 days to get a phone call saying she was done. December 21st, 2019. I knew driving to work that morning that something horrible was going to happen that day. I could feel it. And I wish I could forget that feeling. Still ain't over it. Don't plan to ever be. I waited on her hand and foot. Every night. Brought her a tea. Checked every room to make sure there were no intruders. Went to the store for her if she wanted a snack. Etc. One day I was really sick with the flu and asked if she'd get me a Gatorade from the store. She was shocked that I asked and said, "Absolutely not." Then I thought about it and realized that she had never complimented me, supported me, nurtured me, consoled me or showed any level of emotional care for me. I knew at that moment that she never would. All she did was complain that I didn't do enough for her. It took me a while, but I realized I was in an abusive relationship. The worst part is I tried to make it work. Still, after all that, and it was her that pushed me away because she wanted to move to Portland, but it was also because I didn't make enough money at the time. It was actually almost immediately after getting married. Our relationship had taken a nosedive as soon as we moved in together. But after we got married, while we were in Greece on our honeymoon, he absolutely lost his mind on me in public. I had wanted to go see a beach on the island that is supposed to be one of the most beautiful in the world. So we tried to catch the bus. But it never came. He screamed at me, telling me he hated traveling with me and how could I ruin his vacation like this. Then we walked to the beach nearby and he went swimming with his 2 friends who he insisted come with us on the trip. I was too stunned and humiliated to do anything except sit on a beach chair and cry. On my wedding day, we were married at her parents' house. A beautiful place on a private country club. The entire day was all about her. And she spent more time hanging out with her friend and getting drunk than with me. I stayed busy visiting with all the guests during the day. After all the guests left and it was down to her parents and me, I find her passed out drunk upstairs in a bedroom. I picked her up and carried her to our car to take her home. Needless to say, our wedding night consisted of her sleeping it off. 5 years later she went into inpatient treatment and after she sobered up and was released, she told me that she didn't love me and wanted a divorce. When I realized that my wife loved playing FFXIV to the neglect of our own relationship. She loved it so much she killed herself. She had had a problem with obsessively playing WoW in the past. And we broke up over it. And she quit the game cold turkey and got a job. So we made up. And then we got married. And not long after the marriage, she was back into the gaming, but now it was FFXIV. And we never had any quality time as a couple to just talk. All she ever wanted to do in her free time was drink wine and play her game. My wife was an alcoholic. She died recently. And in the course of going through her things I found out why. Her iPad message history revealed that she had had a whole string of in-game boyfriends the whole time we were together, 12 years. Lots of sexting messages I found. And the night she died, she was excited and happy because she just married her current boyfriend, in-game. But she partied a little too hard that night and drank herself to death. I messaged one of her guildmates to find out what happened. Turns out, no one ever knew she was married in real life. She never talked about me. But she sure did flirt with a lot of guys when she was drunk. And the guy she married in-game was himself, married in real life. We live in the US, but she liked to play on European servers and meet European guys. And I had been on a business trip to Germany for a week the night she died. She was so angry at me for not taking her with me. But it was a business trip and not a vacation. I realize now that what she really wanted was an opportunity to fuck her Italian boyfriend while I was at work. She had the Duolingo app on her phone to learn Italian. And her browser history showed that she had been looking up Italian cooking recipes. My wife never cooked. So she was clearly thinking about an in-person meetup at some point. I was grieving the loss of my wife when I found all of this out. And now I'm dealing with a lot of anger. 2. If she hadn't died and somehow I found this out, I'd be divorcing her ass right now. The second he decided to hit me. We were married for less than a year. And no kids. Thankfully. Took 2 months. And we were divorced. When I realized that they were just mirroring my personality the entire time we dated after several years of marriage. They don't have an original thought or individual aspirations. They have to be walked through every aspect of their life. They married me in hopes that I would mother them. They don't even have an interest in sex after they found out it also requires emotional intimacy on their part. Dragged them to the doctor who put them on SSRIs. Begged them to go to therapy. They kept quitting and could never give me adequate reasons why. We went to a couples therapist who they manipulated into believing they had low self-esteem. The therapist told me to love them through it. I sought out my own therapy. The clinician helped me realize I was being manipulated into the role of caregiver without my consent. I told them I was leaving. They promised to seek help. New therapists saw them for 2 years. Within the first 7 months they were diagnosed as a covert narcissist. They eventually admitted to me that they got married to escape their home life. Their mother is a diagnosed narcissist who severely crippled her children emotionally and mentally. Him specifically by putting him into the golden child role. In her eyes he is so perfect no one deserves him, and at the same time she degrades and demeans him when he uses agency. We are separated. I've never been happier. He's utterly miserable because he moved back home. He would rather endure his mother's abuse than be responsible for his own decisions. Hope they are happy together. They deserve each other. The moment I had to adjust my boundaries, I knew I'm with the wrong guy. The worst happened last year. When after being together for 11 years, he chose to cheat with my niece who just turned 18. I'm 30 by the way. It's not the first time he cheated too. It just kept getting worse from there. All the gaslighting and psychological trauma and abuse. I'd never wish that to anyone. Not even on his mistresses. I wish our country have divorce, we're in PH. We're still together. We'd been married several years and the marriage had gotten increasingly worse. He only ate out of those stackable plastic plates with the dividers, because they reminded him of being a kid and eating with his parents. He saw them in the cabinet and was outraged because I hadn't stacked them inside one another. I stacked them, but at alternating angles, to ensure they were properly dry and wouldn't be wet between plates. He started lecturing me on how they fit inside each other, in an infantilizing way. I'd known for a long time I didn't want to be married to him anymore. But in that moment, I stared at him with hatred and specifically thought, name of best friend from college, wouldn't do this to me. I'm happy to say I'm out of the abusive marriage. And engaged to my best friend from college. Together 15 years. Married 13. She said one day, to hurt me, I don't find you physically, mentally or sexually attractive. I recoiled. This was about 4 months ago. We're still together but I just can't get over it. When I found out he was cheating. Not only was he cheating but he used the same exact lines on his AP that he did when we were in the talking phase. After I discovered his affair and confronted him, he was adamant that he was not going to stop seeing or talking to her. I've never seen him so physically angry in our entire relationship. That was enough for me to get my things and go. Turns out he was a really good liar. One of those cunning fox types that lies about stupid little things to make the bigger lies not seem like a lie. He threw a surprise birthday for me. And towards the end I was inside near the food table and everyone had already gone outside. I affectionately called him over as he was passing by to have a moment. He rolled his eyes and walked on saying he was hanging out with so-and-so. Anyone, even a stranger on the road, was always more important. He just did not give a fuck about me. He only did things for how he would appear to others. 1 month ago, My husband abandoned me during surgical recovery to have a date that went an hour and a half after pub closed. While I was bedridden, in my car, I wrote the following post that day in our suicide watch. Hi. I need help. I just really need a kind word right now. My husband lied to me today. To meet another woman. That's the raw fact of it with no nuance. I feel empty. I just had a hysterectomy. I'm bedridden and sitting on a large supply of opioids from surgery. I don't feel okay. I feel dissociated. And I really need a kindness. Please. I just need some kindness. I'm not okay. I counted the tramadol he left behind with me later that night. It was 82. I think he wanted me to die. When he was closing the door behind him, I was on hold with the National Suicide Hotline. And he knew it. Grabbed the keys anyway. My post history makes my hands shake. Edit. Holy toe beans. The support. I am divorcing this creature. He ended up leaving me for a solid week after I lost the organ. And home support couldn't help me. I don't have money for maids. So I ended up doing laundry and cat boxes as best I could alone. He didn't care. Since then, I have discovered 2 women in his life that he is flirting with. And some extremely racy photos of one in his phone. He is already planning his successful dating life. Citing that he will slay on Tinder later this year. The other men on the app are garbage. I am dissolving my partnership in our company. And he moves into his mother's leaking basement on Friday. He'll be a real winner in his 30s with a failed company. Living in mommy's basement. TLDR. Karma came around. He's getting his. And I'm getting out. When he didn't mention me in his speech at our wedding. He thanked everyone else. Commented on the bridesmaids. Talked about our daughters. I may as well not have even been there. First night of our honeymoon I got horrendously sick. And he left me alone in our room to go watch something on the big screen on the beach. So much for sickness and health. About 2 weeks before the wedding. Long story, I went through with it. Had 2 kids. Went through 16 years of a sham marriage. Finally separated. That was 6 years ago now. I would wish I had done it sooner, but I would never wish away my kids. I love them. When she sat me down and with a straight face said, "I've thought about this and you're not going to exercise anymore." I was jogging a few miles a day and would usually bring kids within running stroller. She said, "You're a father and it's too time consuming." That's when I realized I made a terrible mistake. Lol. Catching her with another man in my car didn't help the case to stay married. We had been engaged for just over a year, together for around a decade, and I realized I didn't actually want to be with her. I just was too invested and I didn't want to make her upset. I knew we would end up getting divorced at some point down the road, so I decided to end it before then. Went to therapy and realized I had spent my whole childhood trying to make my parents happy. And then I immediately got into a relationship and spent all of my adulthood trying to make her happy. I was miserable because of it, but I just didn't know. When I saw her on an escort site. Edit. I got an email from unknown saying, "You don't know me, but I heard you are a good guy and you don't deserve this." Link to the site. Still not sure. It comes and goes. About 3 months after we got married, a conversation topic came up about CP and pedophilia, in which he defended his position that it's okay to make CP as long as it's not explicit, i.e. just lewd or nudity, since no one is being harmed. And if it is explicit, just make it AI or drawn. Then proceeded to show me his subscriptions to artists that make drawn and hyper-realistic ICP. I filed for divorce the same day. Contacted the authorities the following morning. Edit. For those asking, it's extremely rare that anyone will be convicted of a crime for this, even if it is illegally federally. The police seized our devices and conducted a search but didn't find real CP, so nothing could be done, even if they thought it was uncomfortable and gross. They suggested I fill out a form to contact the FBI, who could do more with the same information. Which I did, and there was never a follow-up. Locally, word got around. He lost his job. All his friends. His sister tried to defend him and fight me. And then 2-ish years later he was taken in and arrested for drunkenly assaulting a woman he knew. I believe he is on probation now. I've had zero contact since the night of, so I am not 100% where he is or what he is doing. So, not the justice I was hoping for. But it was received nonetheless. Anticlimactic, I know. It still sickens me and fills me with anxieties to think about. I believe there's only ever been one reported case and arrest for CP of this nature. Even though again it is illegally federally. It sickens me to think about how normalized this is becoming and how many predators are just out in the world finding ways to offend. Somewhere around the time he started using me as a punching bag. About a year and a half into our marriage, she got an internship with Disney and had to move to the other side of the county for 7 months. 6 months into the internship, she tells me that she met someone else. She continued to string me along for another 6 months, saying she doesn't want to get divorced, but she's just been really confused. It turns out she just wanted to keep using me to pay all the bills while she finished her degree. Once she was a month away from finishing school, she admitted that she never really wanted a relationship with me. She only started dating me to make her ex jealous. Had been cheating on me for about 90% of her 10-year-long relationship. And only stuck around because her ex didn't want to get back together and she didn't want to take care of herself. She told me she knew this most recent guy she was cheating with was the love of her life after 3 weeks. They had a kid together less than a year after we got divorced and split up within 2 years. The first wife. I had inklings that I might not have married the right person when I was working full-time, making very good pay, and she decided to quit her job and just sat at home on her ass. We had a maid come every week to clean the house top to bottom, do the laundry and all the dishes, and the house was still a hellhole 6 days a week. If dinner was made at all when I got home from work, it was hamburger helper or a microwaved hot dog wiener and blue box macaroni and cheese. It really became clear when I caught her cheating. Her exact words to a friend, "My husband's an angel. But I'm bored." The second wife. I realized multiple times, over and over, that I married exactly the right person for me. Took a while to get divorced, but it was either when he was throwing a temper tantrum when my dad was dying from cancer and when he yanked me out of bed after he cheated on me, accusing me of cheating on him while I had the flu. He still won't admit he cheated while I was sick in bed. We had just moved out from my parents' place with our daughter. We had been living there for about 6 months because of financial difficulties. I was the only one working. He was not, because of a bad back which ended up being a fake injury. We were not getting along at all while living there, and for some reason I thought things would get better now that we had our own place. The opposite happened. The yelling and swearing got worse. His controlling behavior just got worse and worse, to the point where if I had a shower without permission he would bang on the door while screaming at me. I don't know the exact moment, but it was sometime during that month that it all finally clicked in that it was never getting better. I knew he worked with some attractive women, and I started hoping that he would have an affair with one of them and either leave me for her or it would give me the guts to leave. I still felt sorry for him because of his fake back injury. I stayed with him for another year and a half, and in that time he forced me and our daughter to move far away from my parents because they were beginning to figure out that he was faking his injury. He ended our marriage 2 months after the move because I ran out of money for the first time in our relationship, but we still lived together for around 6 months until he finally moved out because I suspect he wanted to get with another woman. When I lifted the veil and realized I was in the wrong church. About 3 years after, but I did spend the next 55 years trying to make lemonade out of lemons. She passed away 6 months ago. About 2 years after marrying. I was 29. We had been together for 8 years total. Arguing constantly, and I'd never considered or really paused for a second to consider if we were actually right for each other. I'd never been great with girls, but we clicked and we went from dating to moving into engaged in about 3/4 of a year. Then you get swept along wedding planning, and when you pause for thought you realize it was wrong. But you were on an escalator that kept going from checkpoint to checkpoint so fast. You didn't pause to think, is this what I want? Laying in bed one night and she was ill. And I'm such a soft and considerate person, to my detriment. But I glanced at her asleep and the thought, "I don't love you," popped in my head from nowhere. Terrifying and also embarrassing. When you had a 150+ strong wedding 2 summers ago. No idea why it did. But one of the most overwhelming emotions was embarrassment at how I'd let it get to that point. We overheard some younger, 20s, girls laughing and having a good time nearby. I thought to myself, that's a great laugh. Sounds like they're having fun, and enjoyed some vicarious happiness. My wife heard the same laugh. Looked over at me. Rolled her eyes and went, "God. I could just slap her." before we even got married, and I realized his friend treated me with more understanding and compassion than he ever had. Married him anyway. However, it's been 11 years since then and we are still married. We've been through a lot. Improved ourselves and worked on things in our marriage. I would never suggest someone stick it out with a partner who they are unhappy with because they might change. But in our case it worked and we are happier than we've ever been. I definitely wasn't perfect either, and I think we ultimately married too young. Thanks to parents pushing us to be married ASAP rather than the long engagement we intended. But time and maturity have helped. It was actually such a small thing that made me click I married the wrong person. Looking back, our whole relationship was horrible, but it was this event that made me click my choices. As a bit of backstory, I was ridiculously depressed, so I had gained a fair bit of weight, and he knew I was extremely insecure about this as I had a severe eating disorder as a teen, and despite my then size my brain was still programmed to think the same, and I was very sensitive about any remarks about my weight. My husband and I also have birthday one after the other. His was first and mine was second. I had expressed that I felt every time our birthdays come around I feel forgotten, as we'd have a party or an event on his birthday and make a big deal about it. And he'd only turn the attention on me after midnight and bring out his now half-eaten cake with mostly burn-out candles and sing me happy birthday. That was only if we had a party. If we had an event we'd do his birthday events, and then my birthday he'd just give me an unwrapped gift, and that was that, despite me making an effort in his birthday every single year. He knew how I felt, so we decided to go away to a historical city in my county. We were both massive history buffs, so it was right up our alley. We had a lot of fun and spent the first few days looking around to decide what we wanted to do on our birthdays, and agreed to arrange something for each of our birthdays. The city has a lot going on, and I pointed out a few things that I'd like as a surprise for my birthday, but I ultimately wanted to go see the local church, which was quite famous. As well as an exhibition of Richard III, literally a stone's throw from our hotel room. He agreed with this and set out where he wanted to go on his birthday. His birthday was a success, and I know he still talks about his birthday to this day. We went out to all the places he wanted to do. Took him to his favorite restaurant. Even brought his presents with him so he'd have something opened on his birthday. And as a surprise, they has a ghost tour around the city on an old hearse bus. Something he loved and ended up being his favorite part, as he didn't know it was in town. We went to be happy, and I was optimistic this was going to be a good birthday. As soon as we woke up, he decided he was in a bad mood and grumbling about every place I wanted to go. And I wanted to just have a bit of a lie-in, as I hadn't slept great the night before. But he was getting antsy about wanting to go down for breakfast. I said I wasn't hungry and wanted to just stay in the room a little longer. He then pushes me out of the bed. And I just flop onto the floor, as I wasn't being rushed today. A bit bratty, but I just wanted to enjoy having a bit of autonomy on my birthday. He then proceeded to grab me arm and pulled me up and said, "Get up, you fat lazy lump." And his expression instantly gave away that he knew what he said would hurt me, and it instantly spiraled into me getting upset, because not only did he say that to me when he knew it was a sensitive point, but on my birthday. When he eventually calmed me down, he said, "I'm sorry I made you cry. I only said it because I thought it would make you get up faster." So after that we went about my birthday, but instead of doing what I wanted, we went around to every location he wanted to. We were there a week and never got to see the church or the exhibit. Which after the event he admitted he didn't want to go and see, and admitted he started the fight knowing I'd be upset, so wouldn't want to do anything or really celebrate. This kinda made me click that my happiness in life was never a priority. Sadly, it still took me another year and a bit before we actually broke up. If you read all this, thank you for your patience. Thankfully not married but living together. When he called me incompetent for taking literally less than 15 seconds to turn off subtitles in Netflix. In that moment I realized that I had been living in fear and pain for so many years, but that the things he was willing to put me down and call me names over were becoming smaller and smaller, and I was already walking on eggshells. I couldn't take any more. When my aunt, who I loved dearly, passed away, she was only 54, and I was devastated by her loss. Which my husband knew. As soon as we got home, my husband said, "Well, that's that. We can move on now. She was just cold in the ground," and he was saying that being dead, no pun intended, serious, whilst turning on his PS4 to play games. I was speechless and went to bed by myself, feeling so utterly lonely. 2 days later he forgot my birthday. We've been divorced for 7 years now. Between after the wedding and leaving for our honeymoon we stopped by our apartment. So, this is after our wedding. He turns to me and says, "This was wrong. We shouldn't have done this. Stop smiling." This is after he ignored my family at the wedding. Greater than also. I paid for the wedding, the honeymoon, and all the wedding rings. Not my parents. Me. Definitely one of my top self-sabotage moments. Still stuck in the marriage. Edit. Sorry, I should have elaborated. This was a breaking moment for him. He regained himself afterwards. Basically he had an after-wedding flip-out moment. But it was the moment I realized I had made a huge mistake. But then again I self-sabotage bit time, so it makes sense I ignored all red flags prior. I know I'm a codependent moron. I'm dirt poor now. We have young child now and I have developed unbelievable anxiety and insomnia. So it's hard to work. Also, the wedding was extremely small. Not pricey. My dress was $300 FYI. This was 10 years ago. To his credit he is a great father. But I do look forward to hopefully someday leaving. One can hope. When I asked for the most simple thing, please get up off your chair from playing videos games to greet me when I'm home from working a 12-hour day. He never did it. When he treated me like a chair that should sit in the corner and leave him alone until he needed to use me. There were a lot of red flags. Things like him telling me I was low on the attractiveness scale. And embarrassing to him because I was intellectual. Highly educated. Yet extremely shy, so came across as a stuck-up snob to everyone. Spoiler. Only he and his friends thought this. Maybe not even his friends. He also did other stuff like spending money on toys for himself that we had allocated for remodeling. Pretty necessary stuff like getting rid of 25-year-old disgusting carpet in a new-to-us house. The kicker for me was when it came time to have kids. He swore he was all in. But when we weren't getting pregnant we both got tested. Turned out he had borderline low testosterone and some other issues that were solved with a simple over-the-counter daily medication that had zero side effects. We tried and I increasingly went through more painful and invasive testing and procedures the whole time with him saying how he was in 100%. Because I checked in with him often to make sure. Turned out he had been sabotaging the process the whole time. Intentionally not taking the daily meds and doing some other stuff to ensure we would fail. Funny you ask. Which time? About 5 years into my first marriage. It took me another 5 to get out of it. When I found that he was texting and calling his 18-year-old student, think he was 33. Although, he was so mentally abusive and gaslit me about for years that I made myself believe it was fine. Even when he met with her in a field at 1 a.m. and even when he would stay out till 3 in the morning with her because she needed support. I knew it was wrong, but I was too embarrassed and weak to do anything and wanted my marriage to work. We have been divorced since 2019 and he is living out in Kuala Lumpur with Hannah. He really shouldn't work with kids ever again because he clearly groomed Hannah. Didn't you, Tom? When I caught her cheating on me. 11 years into our marriage. On Valentine's Day. Divorced her within 6 months. And had full custody of my kids. At their request. A few years later. It's been a wild ride. On a lot of levels. When I finally got my son's double citizenship. His sister called him and said she set a date for her wedding and he made me stop the I-130 process because he said he would not leave the country until after he had walked his sister down the aisle. I crossed the border with my kids and he returned to Oaxaca. He didn't say a word to me about him migrating back to the US until after 6 months had passed. The whole time I'm a single mother to 2 kids. Juggling their school, my new job. Getting registered to bring back in my own country after 10 years abroad and my kids dealing with new country, new culture, new language. 3 months in I decided I was done. He cemented for me that he was a mama's boy and he was never going to change. So I told him I was done. When I booked a business meeting to discuss how our future would change as our teens transitioned to university. Assured him it was all positive. Just wanted space to talk. It's always been very difficult to find time to talk to him, so I figured I'd be all businesslike since work has always been priority number 1. That didn't go well. I had barely opened my mouth and he shat all over me about my ever-changing hobbies. Those ever-changing hobbies have been guitar and oil painting for the last 8 years. I mentally checked out that day. It was when I decided one day to keep a tally sheet to count how many days it was until the next time I heard her say to me either "Thank you" or "I'm sorry" or any compliment at all. I kept that sheet for months before I had an epiphany. The day it was over was the day I decided to start keeping track. Not the day I hit some arbitrarily high number of tally marks. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.